Welcome to a Soulfull podcast. I'm Ariana Platten, founder and chief visionary officer at soulfullworld.com. My guest today is Katherine Skaggs. Katherine Skaggs is the author and artist of the multi-award-winning 2022 Cover Visionary Awards Book of the Year, which is called Artist, Shaman, Healer, Sage. Timeless wisdom, practices, ritual, and ceremony to transform your life and awaken your soul. She's the artist of the award-winning and iconic Mythical Goddess Tarot, and the artist and author of the soon-to-be-released Masters of Light Wisdom Oracle. Katherine also created the art for the Pocket Deck, Pocket Full of Goddesses, a Blessing Oracle, the art and writing for the Pocket Full of Blessings, and the art for more than 100 sacred altar cards to date. Katherine is very well known for her channeled soul portraits, spirit guide paintings, totem animals, and spirit helpers. To date, she has painted these personal soul-revealing portraits and channeled sessions for thousands of people. My guest today is Katherine Skaggs. Good morning, Katherine. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be with you.
It's a privilege. My little story about Katherine is that I fangirled her at the Coalition of Visionary Resources Awards because she won Book of the Year. And I don't know that I've ever fangirled anybody, but I ran up to the table and said, "Oh, I'm so happy you won this award." And I walked out afterwards and thought, oh, that wasn't very graceful at all. But I just have been so deeply moved by this book. And prior to our beginning this interview, Katherine was telling me it's gone on to win another 11, was it 11 additional awards?
A total of 11 awards at this point.
Wow. Wow. And wow. And I'm not surprised. This book is stunning. And some of you will be listening and unable to see this picture. But for those of you who can see it, this is what the book looks like. And it is cover to cover. I guess we have to do it this way so you can see. Cover to cover, amazing works of art. And just a book that you are going to savor as you read it. Not a book that you will rush through, but a book that you will take your time and spend time with. And a book that is an alive and spiritual presence in your home, which is powerful, right? Like, how many books are there? A few that are living sacred presence in your home. This is that kind of book. Really amazing. So, Katherine, our readers have heard your bio and know a little bit about you, as little as we can tell them in those quick words. Tell us what's not in your bio that our readers and listeners and viewers should know about you.
Well, that's a big question. And I think, what do I want to tell you? And it's like, life is an adventure. And this life sure has been an adventure. You know, I started out in Oklahoma, of all places, in a very Baptist conservative orientation. So I was kind of like the weird kid, as the sensitive one. You know, my animals were the safe place. They're the ones that made sense. Humans didn't make a lot of sense to me early on. I remember thinking, why are people so mean? Literally, you know, thinking of the world and just what I knew about it as a kid. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's so funny that you told me you were a minister in our earlier talks, because that was one of the things I wanted to grow up to be, besides a veterinarian and an artist. And that I kind of loved the God thing. I just didn't like the religion thing. So it's no surprise to me that I was kind of like the little black sheep religiously who embarked on the journey early on to start finding the meaning of life. That was always somewhat, I wanted to understand. When I knew as an empath, I didn't know that was what it was called back then. I'm 64 now, and that wasn't my language, but I was sensitive. And that I was looking for harmony. I didn't know it. as I was saying a little bit earlier in our conversation before recording, is I was rather reluctant to be a teacher. I was rather reluctant to be the intuitive in the room. I was rather reluctant to be a reader. And yet I'd embarked on opening all this up in myself in my late 20s, mid to late 20s.
Mhm.
In my early 30s, I owned a metaphysical store called Dreamweaver here in Fort Collins, Colorado. Very loved place. And during that time, I would see works by these visionary artists like Alex Gray and Susan Seaton Boulay. And I thought, I think I'm supposed to do something like that. I want to say this for all of you listening, watching, whatever it is, this message is for you too. Is there may be something that you're wanting to put together in your life and yourself. And that, so I inquired to my guides, how does my art and my spiritual path come together? And I loved creating my store and doing all that I did there, but I just had this feeling something was supposed to happen. So about a year later, inwardly, I heard soul portraits. And I have to say, I'm a little irreverent, so I hope it's okay to say this. I remember knowing exactly what it meant. It was like an information packet came in when I heard those words. Because I was shy, nobody believes that now, because I was reluctant to actually step forward with what I knew inside could come out of me, but I was a little reluctant.
I think we have people who are feeling those impulses are on their own, feeling that pull to step into something that they're, as you said, reluctant to claim, but also can't deny the calling toward. And I think it's powerful for people to hear a story like yours and hear that you had that reluctance, and look at what you're doing today and how you've touched the world in such a powerful way.
Thank you. It's the most meaningful thing I could imagine for my life.
So you've done some studying, and one of the things that I appreciated in reading the book is that you talked about some of the indigenous tribal study that you've done. It's clear that this book is the culmination of a lifetime of learning. This is not just a book of artwork. It's teachings and inspirations and short rituals and ways to live your life. Talk a little bit about your experience, because we go from like, I grew up Baptist to I am practicing shamanism. There's a story in between there we'd love to hear.
It's been years. When I was a kid, this was probably one of the first clues. I think of all the different clues we have in our lives about what we're programmed for, so to speak. Like, we have a GPS inside of us. I call it our spiritual GPS. We've got a North Star right in the center of our beings if we can learn to be still and trust it and then act on it. So when I was a little kid, we had black and white TV, and we would watch cowboys and Indians. I didn't want to be a cowboy. I wanted to be the Indian. Why? Because I don't know. Because that was my inclination. Then when I owned my metaphysical store, I had actually, prior to having the store for 4 years, I'd studied at a mystery school. Well, I didn't know that there were shamanic teachings within those studies. They're all connected. I studied Buddhism principles and Hinduism principles, Sanskrit type works back to Egypt. They're all shamanic. I didn't know that. The way I came into that door was very mystery school looking. Now, many years later, when I had my store, I would have our Carlos Nakai. Do you know who he is? He's this beautiful native flute player. Well, he and Peter Cater would come to town. I'd sell their CDs. I got to meet him, hang out with him. I thought, and also I sold medicine cards, and I got to meet the authors there. And I thought, well, maybe I'll get to meet someone I'll get to study with the Native American. Nothing ever happened. So many years later, after I'd closed my store, gone on some life adventures, which always was like crazy learning experiences. I've had a couple of dark night of the souls. I'm either a slow learner, I had some big stuff to do this life to learn compassion for myself and everybody else. And I'd say, it's the journey up the mountain. It is what it is. And take it in and honor it. Everyone's got their own special journey. So as I get into 2006 and so, I've got a lot going on, but I had broken up from a relationship at the end of that year, and this cycle of suffering came back. That was so apparent. I'd struggled with depression my whole life. And that's part of my path, was to help clear that, to help heal myself, to help come home to the truth of who I am, to be present to that. I got this guidance. I'm like, threw the gauntlet down to my guides. I'm like, what the heck? I need some help here. And I need to heal my heart. My heart's broken. And I got this download to find Sondra Ingerman. She's this well-known author and shamanic teacher for many, many years now. And I was not guided to find a practitioner of hers. It was her. It was very specific. So I Googled, where was she teaching somewhere? No, she was on sabbatical writing. I'm like, well, just keep it up, keep looking. So one day on the internet pops up, thank God for Google, right? One day on the internet pops up this experience at Eagle Bear Ranch in northern New Mexico. I'm in Colorado. It's 7 hours away. It's not that far. And Sondra Ingerman was going to be there. And I thought, oh, this sounds really awesome. It was 4 days of just to go and receive healing from these shamanic practitioners so there was Sondra, and there's Jose and Lena Stevens of the Power Path School of Shamanism. This was their place. And they sounded familiar, but I realized later I'd sold their earlier books back in the 90s in my store. And then there were 2 Shipibo shamans from the jungles of Peru. And I thought, oh, this sounds really cool, especially because I could use all their help. And so I signed up. It was inexpensive. I was thinking, oh, I have to camp. I haven't camped in 100 years. But I got a trailer, stayed on the land, but we did 1 day on the land in a tent for 24 hours. We did what's called a solo. And that's a very profound practice that anyone can actually do. It's good to have watchers, and if you're not going to eat or drink for a day and you're going to be in the wilderness. But so one of our first experiences was 24 hours on the land, and to reconnect and also to let go of anything that's not harmonious. And experience is really important. The path of shamanism, and I think any mystical path, is truly one of experience, to know, not to believe someone at the pulpit talking to you, but you to develop or to practice, apprentice with others who have mastery. And these people do. And I was very blessed that I got some good guides who said, go here. I'm like, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And that's pretty much how I've been for quite a while now. Is okay, I asked, I better listen, and I will pay attention, and I will act on what you give me guidance on. It really has been like picking up the breadcrumbs and being in conversation with spirit from the minute I felt, oh, there's more. As a little kid, it's been there since forever. And I'd say you and everyone listening, we all have it. Everyone on this planet has it. It's just a matter of what stage of development we're in and how much we're willing to be open. And if you ask, you better be ready to do something with it, or you might lose some of those major guides who are there for you.
So there's this very physical piece that is your work, Katherine, this very physical, like, this is the book, there are cards, there are all kinds of pieces. And then when I hold this book and I read this book and I spend time with it, and as I said, it's a book that invites you to stay with the art, to just let yourself drop almost into altered space, out of your day-to-day analytical mind and into companionship with each of these pictures. When you do that, it becomes really obvious that this is a multidimensional work, that this is not just a work that was created just on this plane, that it's a book that is a creation of many planes of existence. And also that when you are reading this book, you're in relationship with a multidimensional environment. That makes me wonder about your experience in putting it together. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how it came to be, how you got inspired to do this, and what the experience was in creating it.
Oh, and as multidimensional as it's multi-layered too over many years, obviously a lifetime, but specifically after I started staying with Jose and Lena at the Power Path and working with the shamans around the world and their teachings, one of the things that we worked a great deal with is the medicine wheel. And I just, and for years prior to, I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for a long time. I even, my first degrees in teaching in traditional education, before I just said, I don't want to do traditional anything. I got to go off on whatever I'm supposed to do. But I'm born a teacher, I guess. It's about paying it forward. And so when I was taking the classes, I was in the 2-year program from 2008 till 2010, plus continued a lot of ceremonial work with them for many years. And the medicine wheel is a great example of a very basic teaching that is very vast, that teaches us about containers for our lives, containers of cycles, how to help us understand where am I in time and space, where am I in my personal spiritual growth, what is this about that's going on? Is it a possibility? Is it a beginning? Is it adolescence? Is it all these different things? And learning about that as allies, energies to work with that are supportive. And I have taught for years intuitive painting classes. So I started teaching an intuitive painting journey around the medicine wheel. Well, in about a year's time, by 2011, that morphed into my beginning teachings around artist, shaman, healer, sage, an introductory course to shamanism. I taught it in my own backyard. I have for many years traveled and done teachings and workshops and soul portraits across the US and various places, particularly in Chicago and Texas and Florida and stuff. But I've always had students who said, well, since you're not here to do that 6-month course, will you write a book?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, of course. And I think I've got all the teachings down. I have written materials. Why don't I have a book together? And I started the process. But I've learned over time through my experiences in this life so far is that everything has a time and a birth time. You can't rush it sometimes. It's a culmination. And so this book got physically written and birthed, a year or two it took me to actually write the bones of this, get it all put together. The artwork goes back to some of my first visionary paintings. There's a few pieces in there that are from 1995 or 6 or 7 in there, and a lot of artwork from earlier. And so it's woven itself together. And I like to talk about that. There's a story about Grandmother Spider in there, and she talks about weaving life into form.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has been woven through my life, and particularly the last 15, 16 years, but actually before that. And so there's been parts and pieces that came forward as I began to sit and say, what goes in this book? It was interesting because I chose my designer. I knew that I am capable of designing. I've done that with some of my decks, but I need another master who's really good, who can co-vision with me. And so I want to honor Lori Beatty. She was a student of mine many years ago in some of my intuitive painting classes, a delight, a writer herself, an artist herself. That the words and the imagery in this book are channeled. I've been a painter my whole life, and I started to put my spiritual essence, connection, and understanding as a messenger with my art as I began working on integrating visionary art, as I call it, spiritually sacred art, and how to embody that, how to bring that forth. What was that in my experience? What spoke to me? And my heart's always been so connected to the divine. It's like it started happening. And magic and things coming through that I became aware of later as I look back and go, oh my God, that was so there. And I wasn't conscious of it at the time, but I became conscious later. Well, I didn't paint for 5 years. I actually, speaking of Dark Night of the Soul, when I had a metaphysical store for 7 years, and because I'm got a nice little Capricorn and Mars. I love to work, and I was out of balance. And being such a spiritual being, I was doing all this stuff, and I kind of fell over and had a dark night of the soul healing crisis. So I closed my store and I didn't work for a year. And at that point, I quit painting for 5 years. I got back on my feet. I actually worked in corporate for a couple of years. I thought, what am I doing here? Got back into my spiritual life, what was more purposeful for me in the fabric of my being. And I had a second store opened with a business partner, and she had a dear friend come visit to help open the store, who is an amazing artist. She's very well known now, and her name is Shiloh Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I'm
Shiloh.
familiar with her, yes.
So she came out, and the first time I actually met her physically, I knew who she was. And so this weaving, this unwinding happened, where she said she saw some old drawings of mine. She said, "Are you painting?" And I thought, what an interesting thing when she sees some old artwork of mine. I said, no, I haven't been able to get myself to do that in the last 5 years. And she said, I actually came for you. I'm like, wow. She knew, as often happens, is that we think we go to do one thing and it turns into another.
Mm-hmm.
And so her invitation to come open the store was actually, she had a very purposeful place in my life, and I have big gratitude to her. Makes me still cry. It touches me so deeply. She did a little 5-minute meditation with me, and then I always had a studio, even if I wasn't painting. So we went up to my studio in the house. She got her paints out, which I'd never used. I hated acrylics at the time, but she got golden fluid acrylics out. She put some on. She said, get a big canvas, get my brushes out. And she literally put some paints out and she stuck the brush in. She said, paint. And I was like, okay. And I just started Goddess coming out. And she's like, wow, you're really confident. And I said, well, I've been doing this a long time. It's just been the last 5 years. But she opened me back up, and the goddesses and divine beings started flooding in. I was going back and forth to the store every day, and I kept seeing Mother Mary. And I'm like, okay, I get it. You want me to paint? You had a very specific image that kept showing up. And on the third night, I fell asleep in bed, tired from the day, and she woke me up. And I'm like, oh, and it was telepathy. It was transmission, understanding. And I'm like, oh, go to the studio. And in the middle of the night, I painted a 3-foot by 4-foot painting of her. And I don't think she's in the book. She's in my new deck, Masters Light Wisdom Oracle, but she oversees everything as far as I know. She's one of my main guides. She transmitted this through the art on that canvas. And she let me know that the importance of sacred art is to change help us change our vibration. We can't get there intellectually. Those words are great. They're going to connect to you and your intellect, but the vibration of the words and the artwork are the tool that help us shift our frequencies up so we can actually be different. We can be more illuminated. We can be more heart-centered. We can be more masterful in our divinity and our earthliness. All of this was the portal to not only me remembering who I am beyond my earthly limited little girl self that I began with the challenges, to being a luminous being of light. And that this is an activation. This book, the artwork in it, the energy in it are activations for people. They're high frequency energies you've tapped into. So fun to work with you because you get it. I mean, and even when I first released it, and some of the people I know who are sensitive, they pick it up and go, oh my God, without even opening it. So that's been some of the interesting journey. And I still know that all the divine beings that come, they're reflective of all the ascended masters, all the celestial beings, all the higher dimensional beings who are here to root us on during a very challenging time and to help us. The book has things each of us can practice, but it also is inspirational in terms of so much energy and the imagery. And I'd be curious if you take time to sit down, who speaks to you in this book? Who jumps off the pages and says, "Oh, you're totally connected," because there's at least 70 paintings in there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Dream a New Dream. That's her name.
Yep.
Dream a New Dream.
Yeah, I can't leave her. She calls me back. There are so many amazing beings in this book, but this one calls me back over and over and over again, and I get lost in the feeling of it. I get lost in the spiraling energy of it. I get lost in the feeling, and I think what calls to me so much about her is that she has this very earth connection of earth and heaven feeling. You know, there's something that happens between. It's that place in between, right? The what's under our feet and what's over our head and around us. But she definitely calls to me over and over. She's just amazing. And I say she because that's how she strikes me.
Yeah.
But she wouldn't have to be a she, but that's how she strikes me. So it's the portals that you talk about. Like for me, I could sit easily with this and take myself to this being and say, you know, clearly you're catching my attention. What's the message? There is just so much here. So much great information. I love what you said about it not being about the words, because I'm a writer by nature. And one of the things that I'm very, very aware of in my own work is that I'm a writer and a speaker. And so words and thoughts are really where I get myself stuck, because they come the easiest to me and they only hit one of the four subtle bodies. So this is another thing that I really like about the way you did this. This is no, I mean, for people who've put books together, everything is top shelf on this book. The cover, the materials you use, the quality of the paper, the way the artwork is reproduced. It is a sensory banquet. Really, truly, like to hold the cover. It's a book of substance, and it has you will physically connect to it. You will emotionally and spiritually connect to the artwork, and you will mentally connect to the words and the teachings that are in here. So, you know, I really love that it hits all those subtle bodies. It really invites us to integrate what we're taking in on all these different levels. So very impressive, my friend. Very impressive.
Thank you so much. You know, it's really cool too, because I said it's a vibrational tool earlier. Yes, I mean, there's so many pieces, teachings in there, practices, rituals, so much to enjoy, stories, so much to enjoy. And like what you just said, if you find a piece of artwork in the book, you can sit and gaze with it, sit and work with it. You know, one of the things I was reminded of in mystery school that I think I've got lifetimes of experience to be able to do some of these things. I'm pretty sure. I have some past life memories, other life memories about this, but using sacred art as portals to move into the subconscious, into the ethers, into the other dimensions, to unite with the frequency, the essence, the teachings. I hate to even use my language to divide it, because it's wholeness.
Right.
It's wholeness. It's all of it. It's not one of it. Like you said, I'm grateful for your words about the four subtle bodies and that it hits all of them. Is that if you want to sit down with that painting, Dream a New Dream, and say, what do you have? I'm going to go sit with you. That is one of the most cool ways of awakening intuition, getting direct guidance and activation energetically to go to the frequency. Right. Where you recognize her. She's a Pleiadian divine angelic being who works with plants and all of it, you know, the earthly parts. So that's pretty cool. You know, I always encourage, you know, people, when I had my store, and the same thing is true of like my altar cards now. Well, which one do you think I should have? They're right here in their head. And I'm like, well, who attracts you? And get them looking at the artwork instead of just the words.
Well, and we're such a mind-based, we are taught from our earliest age to be about thought and words on this planet. And so the understanding of the impact of the vibration of this book for me is more than the words. Genuinely, Katherine, I think having this book in your home is a gift. I just really feel like, oh yeah, even if you don't open it, which you will because it's amazing, but there is an energy and a power to this book that has to do with the portals that you've opened to allow these beings to come to you and share their messages with you and be actually captured in a physical essence. That's a big deal too. It speaks a lot to who you must be as a spiritual being, that these frequencies of energy, these multidimensional beings, not only communicate with you, but allow you to capture a visual image that you can share. Because there's a huge trust in that. That's a massive gift that the universe is communicating with you that way. And this has just been a pleasure to visit with you, to share this book, to be able to fangirl a little bit and tell you that it's just luscious and yummy. And I will come back to it over and over and over and over again. I know that I will. Friends, if you're listening, the book is called Artist, Shaman, Healer, Sage. Timeless wisdom practices ritual and ceremony to transform your life and awaken your soul. It is by the wonderful Katherine Skaggs, who has all kinds, literally thousands of works of art in oracle decks and tarot decks and things that you can go and look at and make relationship with and learn and grow from. And all of that is available. Katherine, where's the best place for them how does somebody get to you if they want to find out more about you, if they'd like to have their soul portrait done? What's the best way to find you?
My name, KatherineSkaggs.com. So if you can spell my name, Katherine, you'll have it on there, I'm sure, Skaggs. That's the most direct way to get to me. And if you buy that book on my website, tell me that you were here and you'd like it autographed. I'd be happy to autograph it to you. I've got a lot of other goody things on there, from services, soul portraits, like you said, products. But yeah, get in touch with me there. Get on my website and see how we can say hello and the best way that I can be of service to you.
Awesome. Well, my friend, thank you for this, and congratulations on the book of the year and the many more awards that I know will come, and more congratulations on the fact that this book is a real healing gift on the planet. Thank you so much for creating it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it being here with you.